Hi everyone. So I'm going to go through a bit of a icebreaker just to get us thinking about online safety and the risks that might come with that, and maybe some of the statistics as well around different kinds of harms. So I'm going to read the question. You'll also see it on screen. If you could just pop in the chat what you think the answers are. So the first question is, how many child sexual abuse offences in 2022 and 2023 included an online harassment element? So do we think it's 2,000 A, 4,000 B, or 9,000 C? So we've got a couple of answers here. We've got C, B, C, 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 B, B, got C. Okay, so I'll actually see a couple more people type in, which is fab. So I'll give you a couple more seconds for that one. Okay, C. Okay, so the answer is actually C, which I think quite a couple of you got there. So it's actually 9,000. So we'll go on to the next one. What percentage of children aged 10 to 15 years old exchange messages with someone online who they never met before in the last year? So what percentage of children aged 10 to 15 years old exchanged messages with someone online they never met in the last year? So 5%, 19%, or 12%? All of these, majority of these actually. Fab. Will the last couple of people put their answer in? Fab. Okay, so a lot of people have gone for B, which is correct. So it's been 19%, which is again the highest one there. Very interesting. So the next one is, what percent of the children aged 13 to 18 in England use a social media platform? Is it A, 60%, B, 82%, or C, 91%? There's a lot of people putting C, A, yeah, majority C. Okay, so the answer is actually C, yeah, 91%. So quite high, as we know. Social media is quite popular, even where there's some age restrictions there. A lot of users are still there that may not meet the threshold of age. But yeah, 91%. So this is the last one of the quiz. Thank you for engaging. What year was the Online Safety Act introduced in the UK? Was it 2018 A, 2023 B, or 2025 C? Got some C, B, B, C. Uh, okay, so that act was actually only put in place in 2023, so fairly new, couple of years on, 3 years on to be exact. So that was 2023. Okay, I'll put B and C, could be any, a bit of a gamble there. Fabulous. So thank you so much for engaging with that one. So hopefully that's got us thinking a bit about things that are in place to protect young people from online safety, and also adults as well, just to get us ready for the presentation. So Moving on to the next slide. So we are going to have a look at some risks in the online space. As well as a spot welfare officer, I also am in a role where I monitor school pupils' online activity to spot emerging safeguarding risks across England and Canada. So I really want to take this opportunity to really share with you some of the insights and what some of the risks are. And then at the end, we're going to have a look at some preventative measures. And Mary's going to lead us into a bit of forward planning, what we can do in our own club. As obviously with me delivering this, you guys have definitely probably got some experience where you've dealt with certain issues or you've got some really good practice that you want to share. Please do take that opportunity, because whilst we're facilitating this, we're also here to learn from each other. So if there's anything that you want to share or even ask somebody else on the call, please do, because that's what we're here for. Obviously, as well, with some of these topics, some of them can be quite triggering. So if there's anything that causes you any sort of upset or reflection, please do take 5 minutes away from the screen if you need to. Just do have a break if you need to, or just let us know. Also, any questions as well. It's very informal, so please just ask any questions that you need to. So before we look at the specific risks, it's important to understand the scale. So according to data, and this was only taken last year, 2025, 77% of UK children aged 9 to 17 report at least one online harm. 30% of children 11 to 17 saw harmful content in the past month, and nearly 9 in 10 children play video games. 1 in 4 talk to strangers whilst gaming, as some of us know. So statistically, in any team of 15 young athletes, it's likely that several of them have already experienced online harm in some form or another, whether we're aware of it or not. So just to get us thinking, we are going to go into a breakout room for 5 minutes to talk about these 2 areas. So what issues have you already seen? And it could be any of those topics underneath, that could be different topics. And what would stop a young person telling you, which is really important that we can reflect on that. What could? So I have organised the breakout rooms. Hopefully they work. I know that there's 3 people unassigned, so we can create a bit of a mini group in the main room. So if you want to take a picture of these questions, that's fine. But what issues have you already seen? And what would stop a young person telling you if they'd experienced some sort of online harm? Hopefully that's got us reflecting on our own practices and where we're at the moment. So when it comes to online safety and online risk types, a helpful model is contact, conduct, contract. So contract risks are about who the person interacts with. Conduct risks are about behaviour, so your bullying, sexual harassment, for example. And contract is all about the risks around money and manipulation, or we might think about gambling scams, for example. And some people can be exposed to all 3, unfortunately. So when we look at the indicators, online harm can show up in a number of ways, just when we're looking for different indicators of different types of abuse. So it could be anger, we might see increased anxiety, withdrawal, secrecy, sexualized language, for example, or even drop in attendance to our sport as well. So it's all about recognising the signs. Whilst you might not be able to tell it's an online safety issue, there's an issue there that we may need to give attention to. And just before we nip into this one, you might also notice new phrases being thrown around, different jokes, slurs that might cause us concern. For example, I used to hear the phrase top G thrown around, and I didn't know until I'd sort of researched it that it's a well-known phrase used by Andrew Tate in his content. You might also see friendship groups splitting up or people being excluded. So these are some of the early signs that we might see. So one of the things I've come across quite a bit is fake Wikipedia style sites, and also young people watching influencers who may be delivering harmful content. So looking at these wiki style sites, this appears from the untrained eye to be Wikipedia, but actually it's a site called Metapedia. So a lot of people do trust Wikipedia, although it does need to be checked Wikipedia at times because anybody can change it. But actually, with Metapedia, this has been criticised for promoting neo-Nazi and white supremacist views. So for a young person researching history or identity topics, it can subtly, it has been known to subtly normalise extremist viewpoints. Under the appearance of neutral information. So it's just one to be aware of. And a young person might not even realise they're on Metapedia, but they are. They might think it's Wikipedia. So just one if you haven't come across this one before. So similarly on social media sharing platforms, we see these influencers and the content doesn't always start off being extreme. It often starts with innocent content like confidence advice or patriotism, gaming, self-improvement. But then some influencers can try and appeal to young viewers who feel frustrated or disconnected, saying relatable things, but then pushing different agendas and views like misogynistic and discriminative views to create an us and them divide, which is something that we wouldn't want in our clubs and sport as a whole. And we can see some of the phrases there that are being said in some of these videos at the side, if you're able to see that. So it's important that we're talking to our young people and our members. We might not have all the information, but we can encourage them to think for themselves and not believe everything that they see online, because fake news can be everywhere. And we all remember the photo of Kate that went viral. And you just can't believe everything that you see. So we just need to keep that communication up and talk about current affairs, talk and not pushing our own views on them, but letting them talk about how they feel about how things are, things they might have read or things they might have heard, opening that communication and building that trust, and helping them to feel like they can speak to us about things that are going on. So online gaming, really interesting one. So games like Fortnite, for example, they're not just games, they are social spaces. And I'm not saying some of these are all bad. Well, most of them are okay. Some of the bottom ones that you can see, I'm sure you're thinking, but young people use online games as like a hangout, they talk, message, share content and form groups. But research has shown that there are people on there don't have the best intentions, and we see it online, on the news, we hear it. And there are people who are targeting young people or vulnerable people or those who are seeking to belong. Also a hotbed for grooming. Some of us might remember the story of Brett Bednar, who was groomed via the online space and was lured to a house and sadly murdered. So it's just keeping an eye on that. And also X-rated games around. Sadly, some awful ones like No Mercy that allow players to control a character who does things like tortures and sexually abuses women. Absolutely awful. It's banned in the UK, but unfortunately, due to things like VPNs, they're still being able to be accessed. Another one that's being searched and accessed by users is something called Five Nights at Epstein's, which I'm sure you can imagine what that's around. So these are everyday spaces for young people, not so much the bottom ones. These are ones that are sadly being accessed, but your games like Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite that are as a whole innocent, but they do pose risks there. And those risks being from conversations or contact from strangers that can happen without adults even finding out about it. And if anybody's got questions at any time, please let me know. Just go back. So platforms like your Omegle style chat sites are still popular with young people, like your chat rooms. But chat rooms today, they don't just look like public websites. They're things like Discord servers, gaming voice chats, and WhatsApp groups as well that can become chat rooms. And again, everyday spaces for young people. And we see the statistics here. So 68% of young people have been exposed to harmful content on chat rooms. 42% of parents don't even know that the child has accessed an anonymous chat room. And platforms like Discord and 4chan have unmoderated servers, risk high volumes of abuse and predator activity. So sounds quite scary, but if we're educating our young people on these sites and really monitoring, it could help prevent. So one other thing is hentai, which is animated pornography. Actually, that is quite a recurring safeguarding risk that young people are accessing. It's often viewed as not real and therefore treated as harmless because it's animated. But for children and teenagers, especially, porn exposure can shape beliefs about bodies, consent, and relationship that are not realistic. There was a report from the Children's Commissioner that very high levels of pornography exposure, that there is levels of high pornography exposure among children by the time they're adults. So that's something again that we need to be just monitoring, really, keeping our ears to the ground. Obviously, this is a very sensitive subject. It's not one that would naturally be in our sports clubs, but it's just being aware of it and keeping our ears out if there's any young people speaking about hentai, for example. So there were studies that children as young as 8 are taking part in gambling. In clubs, adults might sometimes chat around betting odds or fantasy leagues, like it's just part of the game. But for young people, that can make gambling seem like a normal part of being involved in sport. So if they're already exposed to things like loot boxes and gambling style features on games, they might be more at risk of developing unhealthy habits. So that's just something to watch out for as well. And also looking at the message that we are giving to young people and not treating gambling like it's just harmless banter around young players. So with AI becoming quite popular, it's been around for a while, but I think now everybody is getting involved in AI, but obviously that has its negative sides as well. So we've got AI assisted abuse. So there can be generated fake news, fake content, including sexual images, and this can be used for things like humiliation or blackmail. For example, someone putting somebody else's head on an explicit video or a photo. Thank you for popping that in there, Ellie. Really good resource there. Just let Carol back in. And things like this can affect things like body image, confidence. It can start sexual harassment between peers, start coercive behaviour, which we really want to avoid and support any young person going through anything like this. And the last thing we'd want to do, for example, if there was an indecent photo going around of someone in our club, is victim blaming. So really thinking about how we're treating the victim, and also the education for the perpetrator as well, which is really important. Thank you, Karen. So prevention. So whilst it's unlikely that we can eradicate online harms, there's always something new. We can definitely put things in place to try and prevent them. So different things here. Oh, I have skipped one, the scenario, but I'll go back to that one. So online safety policies, clear online behaviour expectations. So introducing that. So actually it ties online safety and being a part of the club together. Consent and respect culture. keeping communication open around online safety, whether that's learning opportunities and CBT for our members, or just keeping that communication open. Photo, video consent, gambling discussion guidance, all things we can support with as well. So I'm going to have a bit of a break from talking, you'll be glad to know, and I'm going to give us some scenarios as a group, just so that we can have a think about how we might approach different subjects. So I'm going to assign different groups a scenario, and what I'd like to do is have a chat and think about how you would tackle. Thank you. I think that brings us to just use some useful contacts here. It was just to really spread awareness of some of the things that young people are being exposed to. There probably are hundreds of other emerging risks that have not been mentioned, but it's not about knowing them all. It's just trying to be prepared. I think Mary made a really good point in the last session around, young people, they'll go on these games and speak to whoever, or they'll make whatever group chat. You can't monitor everything that they're doing or force them to stop doing what they're doing, but if you've got measures around, preventative measures, and you're keeping that communication channel open and you're educating, that really can help and support. So there's some really useful contacts here. We will get them sent out as well to you. There's also the Child Protection in Sport unit that's got some really good resources in. It's not on here, but we'll pop that in the chat as well. Also, report remove that's on here when we're looking at indecent images. And also the Marie Collins Foundation are doing a lot of work to support AI-assisted child sexual abuse. So if you've not heard of them, do check out the website. Got a lot of resources on there, especially for families as well. So thank you so much for your engagement. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask them now or pop them in the chat, or wait till the end, because we're going to have a bit of a discussion there.